Hiya 10. Firstly, I just want to say thank you to everyone for your lovely messages last week about the baby. Really was lovely, and I really appreciate you taking the time to message me and say such lovely things. It meant a lot, so thank you. Okay, so this week things obviously are a little bit different now. You know that you're sort of getting ready to come in for face-to-face lessons. Just on the face-to-face lessons, just to stress that you might not necessarily have me on the day that you're in, because you have to stay in the same bubbles, and obviously you're going in for maths and science first, so you need to stay in your bubbles that you're in for maths and science. So as a result, obviously we have very different classes, so I couldn't possibly put myself on all of the bubbles that you guys are all in, because some of you are on at the same time. So I've gone with where there's a majority of you guys in the bubble. So if you don't have me, then you will have one of the other English teachers, but you're all getting the same message and you're all getting the same lessons, and the lesson that you'll get, the language one, is planned by me anyway, and the literature one will be planned by Mrs. Hughes. So you're all getting the same diet regardless of who stood in front of you. And obviously, you know, we do need to stay in our bubbles, but if there's anything you want to ask me, etc., on the day, if you've not got me, then obviously feel free to approach me at a safe distance, and that's fine. So please don't think you can't speak to me just because I'm not in your lesson. I'll make sure I'm available to you. All right, so because of the face-to-face lessons, etc., we've only actually got now 5 lessons left on Show My Homework before those lessons start, and we really want those lessons, the face-to-face lessons, to be very much about revising and prepping you ready for what's going to be waiting for you in September in terms of that key sort of the assessment you got sent a booklet home for. Now, just to stress as well, the assessment is really just about identifying where your knowledge gaps are. So what have you retained, what have you learned during home learning, what do you what does Mr. Washington, it'll be, need to go over with you in order to prepare you for your GCSEs, obviously. Okay, so the other thing I just need to say, sorry, it's a very waffly introduction, is that I'm actually in work today. So this will be Monday, and usually, of course, I hope that you realise that I am usually sat at my laptop all day. So if you've got any problems, I can reply straight away. I'm going to be in work from 9 o'clock this morning, Monday, with my team, I'm running a team meeting. So I'm unlikely to get to my laptop tomorrow till about 3 p.m. in the afternoon. So if you've got any problems with this lesson, can you bear that in mind, and kind of plan your time accordingly, that I won't be available. It's the same tomorrow as well, because I'm in teaching year 12. So if you just bear with me, it'll be a little bit of flexibility in terms of getting back to you that I'll need. And I'll do the same with you, because obviously on Thursday some of you might be in for maths and science, but I will still be setting you a lesson. I just obviously don't expect you to do it on that day if you're going to be in school all day. Okay, let's get started then. So last week, oh, that's a bit of a naff slide to leave. I'll leave it on the start. Last week, I gave you all a quiz, didn't I, on key writing things that I've already taught you. Now, I was made up. You did really well. I've messaged individuals about questions they got wrong, so that you know where to fill in your own gaps. But I don't feel like there's any particular question that I massively need to go over. So well done. I was really reassured that you know your stuff that I taught you before lockdown. The key document I'd say was missing from most people's is do go back over that formatting different text types, because there's a lot of information on that 2-sided document which takes you through letters, articles and speeches. I think that'd be really good springboard for your revision. So today's lesson, I'm going to go through the mark scheme with you, so you know exactly what you should be aiming for all of the formats, regardless of what question you get asked. And then we're going to do a bit more specific work related to speeches, because obviously you already know that, so I can afford to spend a bit less time on speeches. Okay, so this is the band 3 mark scheme. So this is kind of like that grade 5, 6, where we all want to be at least here. So I thought I'd start with this. You have seen this before, or at least you've seen a student-friendly version of it last year. But I am going to go through it now. So can you write as a title non-fiction mark scheme? And can you just be making notes, please, on the key things that I'm telling you now that you need to kind of be focusing on in your writing. Okay, so the first thing that you need to be thinking about for non-fiction writing is you need to be adapting your language for your purpose. So that's number 1 on the mark scheme there. Oh, apologies. The first column is all about your content and organisation, and that is worth 12 marks out of 20. The second column is your SPAG and your vocabulary, and that is worth 8 marks out of 20. So there's actually not too much difference in the marks allocated. Your accuracy matters 2/3 of as much as your actual content and what you write. So please don't discount that second column. Okay, so there's lots of different purposes that you might be asked to write for in the exam. You might be asked to give your views, which is very, very common. You might be asked to encourage a certain type of group of people or inspire them. You might be asked to give suggestions to people. Give your views is definitely one that comes up a lot, but don't kind of think, oh, I just need to learn these 3 different purposes. You could get any purpose, any reason for writing, and it's about you taking the initiative to step back and think, right, well, how do I need to adapt my language here for this specific task? And that requires engagement, and it requires you to really think about it. Don't just start writing. You really, really need to stop back, like you would if you were in an office and you were asked to write an email to a very specific person with very specific needs. You would choose every word carefully. You probably do it when you're messaging certain friends. You'll pick certain words because you know it'll have more of an impact on them. It's just that skill magnified across 30 minutes of writing. Okay, so you need to also, for number 1, show a clear understanding of the format of the task. So this is where you need to basically make your page look like whatever you're writing. So your addresses, as in letters, your stage directions, your brackets in speeches, and your headlines. Oh dear. There's no double T in matter, I apologise. That's where this all comes into play. So if you're not setting out a letter like is in that formatting document that I've given you already, and we will go back over this, where your addresses are on the right and left side, etc., then you're not going to show a clear understanding of the format of the task. So you're going to be in band 2 for that number 1 skill. So please make sure that you just learn those. It's just learning. If I get a letter, I'm going to write this address here and this address here, and that's it. Okay, so skill number 2 and 3 kind of merged together is all about adapting your vocabulary and your content for your reader or your intended audience. So for example, if you are asked to write a speech for teachers, then you need to be writing content that applies directly to teachers' needs, feelings, priorities. We've talked about that briefly already. And you also need to be adapting your formality for teachers. You're not going to write the same speech for teachers as you would for teenagers. You're not going to write the same speech for doctors as you would for parents. So you need to make sure that your actual language and content is very targeted towards your audience. And I'm going to give you an example of that later on. Okay. For number 4, it's all about developed content. Now, I've marked this paper and I couldn't believe how much they were expecting to get out of band 3. They really, really, really expect you to have developed ideas, and I'm talking keep going, keep going. Do not just write an argument and give one reason and move on. That's not convincing. Okay, so you really, really need to develop. You need to be logical, and you need to think of useful things that you can include that would actually have an impact on the reader. This is almost as well as, it really is a test almost that includes your maturity and your understanding of the world and people and what makes them tick and what makes a good argument, and what good ideas can you come up with. There's a lot being examined here, and I've no worries about any of you because you're all very worldly and you have lots to say in a good way. Right, so 5 and 6 is all about the structure of your writing. So coherent arguments, shape and structure. So obviously you need paragraphs. If you don't have paragraphs, you're not getting into band 3 here, and that will seriously hinder your overall content mark in that first column out of 12. So we're looking for things like connectives, directing your reader or your audience, things like saying, I'll come on to this in a second, or you may recall earlier I said, if you're doing a speech, just using clear connectives to help the reader follow it if it's an article, Don't repeat nouns when you can use pronouns. Don't be saying John went to the park, John ate crisps. You should be saying he ate crisps. Just things like that will all contribute towards your 5 and 6 skills of being really organised and making it easy to follow. And that also links to the last one. So it just needs to be clear. I need to be able to understand what you're writing, and you need to be fluent so it doesn't feel like it's really stilted. If you write a sentence and then you pause and think, what can I write next? And then you write another sentence and then you pause and think, what can I write next? The examiner will be onto you immediately. Don't do it. All right, make sure you know what you want to say, especially before you start each paragraph. All right, so they're the skills for content and organisation out of 12. Make sure you have got keynotes down on these different, because I think one of the difficulties with this exam is just remembering everything that you need to be considering. You need to train yourself to take all of these skills into account when you're writing, and not just for this exam. I want you to have these skills for life, because you will be writing emails to people, you'll be writing letters to people, you will possibly write speeches or at least communicate to a team maybe, or lead a team. You need to always be able to use these skills. So please make good notes on all the different elements you need to consider. Okay, moving on to the second column. Remember I said this is out of 8 and it's just as important, it can affect your grade just as much. Well, I can't say just as much because it's fewer marks, but it's only 4 fewer marks is my point. All right, so first one is all about variety of sentence structure. So complex sentences, short sentences for effect, variety of openers. It needs to feel like you've crafted a variety of sentences. You've not just got like a set sentence structure that you always rely on. Hands up if you have a set sentence structure you always rely on. I do. I usually like to start with a subordinate clause and then do a main clause. That's just my go-to sentence structure. You will have probably a go-to sentence structure. It might be a compound sentence like blah 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 and blah 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 blah. Please make sure, as in 2 main clauses either side of a connective, please make sure that you break out of that you challenge yourself to vary sentence structures. Again, this needs to be a conscious decision. You're not going to accidentally do it straight away. I remember in year 11, sat in my English lessons consciously trying to write different sentence structures in my writing because I knew that I wasn't very good at it. And you can't get good at it by accident. You can if you read a lot, because you automatically soak up different sentence structures, and a lot of you do read a lot, but can you just try and make a conscious effort to kind of challenge yourself to do that in your writing? 2 and 3 I've joined together because you can't really have accurate sentence structures if you don't have an accurate range of punctuation. So basically that's it. Make sure use a full range. Don't discount things like brackets and hyphens. They do count as well as more difficult ones like colons and semicolons and exclamation marks. Don't forget as well about capital letters, because that'll seriously impinge your grade and keep you low. Commas are a key one, especially for subordinate clauses. We've gone over this loads of times, haven't we? So just bear that in mind. And obviously, because it's home learning, it's quite difficult, I think, to target these skills without being able to see your writing. And even when you do send me writing, it's going to be typed, isn't it? So I'll have a think about that. I might need to ask you to tell me what you want me to go over with punctuation. Right, okay. Oh, random green lines there, sorry. Right, control of tense and agreement is basically your grammar. Now, don't underestimate this, because when I marked the exam board, there were actually a lot of candidates who didn't have a good control of tense and agreement, and it did affect their mark. Now, I don't think you guys are going to be in any have any problems with this. We're talking about things like we was versus we were, or I walked, knowing that that's right rather than I am walked, which wouldn't make sense unless you're a dog. So thinking about, just make sure you don't let any of those grammar slips that we make in our spoken language fall into your work, because this is where you'll lose marks. But mostly I think you've got a really good control of your tense and agreements, and you know your basic grammar, so that's good. Okay, sorry, the last one is just about vocabulary. But I'm going to come on to that more for band 4 and 5. All right, so this is the mark scheme for band 4 and 5. If you want to pause on this and kind of make your own notes on the key differences, you can do, but I have summarised the key differences for you. So the key thing I'd be looking for to give you a band 4, and this is what we're obviously, if you're targeted above a 6, which most of you are, then we need to be looking at 4 and 5 for your mocks. Maybe not the one in September, because you've been in home learning and maybe you're not up to that standard yet. That's fine. But this is what you need to be aiming towards. So band 4, I'd be looking for you to have just more range. So more range of sentences, more range of punctuation, more structure for effect, more impressive vocabulary, and a wider range of vocabulary. And I'd be looking for you to have more effective writing. So writing that really engages, it's more detailed, it's clearly targeted to the audience, it's more developed, it's more ambitious. So it's all about the comparison really between the 3 and the 4 is that the 4, I'm just looking for more of everything, whereas band 3, you might just be starting to do all of these things. And then band 5, oh sorry, going the wrong way. Band 5 is about being more professional. So you've got the range, that's fine, but now you've got that extra bit of flair and that extra sophistication, which is the key word you might remember me saying. It's accurate, it's more professional inaccuracy, so there's very few errors. It's more precise vocabulary. You've really thought carefully, like, what is the best word here? What am I really trying to say? And you're really pinning that down. It's convincing content. If this was published, it would be appropriate. Yeah, it would work. Somebody would want to publish it. You've crafted it throughout. You've thought about where you need to highlight a key thing and how you're going to do that. You've thought about this sentence opening here because it's going to have more impact. You've delayed the reader here. You've linked your ending to the beginning. And if we link this to the reading skills, a band 5 student can write whilst thinking about the what and the how at the same time. So you're thinking about what you're saying, which is obviously the most important thing, as we know from our reading, but you're also thinking about how you're saying it, how you're structuring it, how it's going into the reader's brains, and how you can make it the most effective piece of writing you can. Again, that takes training. That's not going to come naturally, and it's something you can practice and sort of enjoy doing. Like I enjoy doing that. I enjoy thinking about what's the best way to phrase this. Now, you haven't got time in 30 minutes in your exam to sort of enjoy it too much, but you can, if you do it now, then it becomes habit and it'll become much quicker in your exam. So you're kind of training your brain to think in a certain way so that in your exam it's just super fluent. Like when you learn to ride a bike or you learn to swim, and then you just stop thinking about all the different things and you just do it, don't you? Okay, so thinking about what and how. All right, so that's it on the mark scheme. You may be pleased to know. I'm just gonna go through now specifically about writing a speech, and I'm gonna guide you through how to approach any question, but we're gonna focus on speeches. So don't forget that you've got this YouTube video that I did many months ago now, I can't remember when it was, about how to write an effective speech. The majority of that is applicable to your written speech in your exam if you're asked to write one. And you can find it on the YouTube channel under the playlist Speech Spoken Language. So don't forget that's there if you are worried about speeches. It will always be there, forever no more. Right, okay, can you write this title then for the sort of second half of the lesson? So we're looking at a model approach to the questions, so how to plan a response to any question. And I'm just doing this through speeches. I feel quite confident having marked your speeches that, or most of your speeches, that I know that you can use stage directions, you know that you need to interact with your audience, and your quiz showed me that as well. So that's what we're going to look at today. All right, so this was an actual past paper question. This is the one that I marked. Write a speech for elderly people, encouraging them to use technology. So this was from 2017. It's the first year of the new spec. So this is a real question. So jot down the question. All right, so these are some key do's of what I would like you to do immediately when you read the question in your exam. So the first thing you're going to do is label your audience. So obviously in this case, it's elderly people. Then you're going to think about someone that you know who fits into that category. Now, it doesn't have to be your best bud. It doesn't have to be your next door neighbour. It doesn't have to even be someone you see every day. It might be someone on a TV show. It might be someone in a film. You know, it doesn't need to be someone that you know personally. Just think of someone who fits that category and picture them in your head and write whatever you're writing to that person so that you are constantly thinking about their needs as you're writing. So it's like a little trick to get you to stay focused on your audience. Okay. Obviously, as well as audience, you need to label your purpose. So in this case, we're looking at encouraging. So you're going to be encouraging elderly people. So the key thing to do with this is make sure you check at the end of every paragraph, am I still encouraging? Is my language encouraging? Is this content that I've chosen to write encouraging? These words that I've formulated in my own head and put on the page that I've created, are they encouraging? Just keep on asking yourself that question to make sure you're staying on track. You'll only be writing for about 25 minutes. You've got to show the examiner that you're focused completely on that purpose, because that's band 3. Okay, right. Less breadth, more depth. Do not cover a huge range of arguments because you will suffer for it in terms of marks. And this is what I was saying before about what I learned as an examiner. It is better to pick 3 to 4 arguments, 3 is probably most likely, in 25 minutes, to develop in a lot of detail. That's how you're going to convince somebody, rather than giving them 20 reasons why they should do something in very little detail. And that just makes logical sense, doesn't it? Yeah, if we think back to our pathos, logos and ethos, just convince them with 3 clear, really persuasive arguments. Don't give them a bullet point list almost of different things. Right, so in this case, for the speech, you're going to make it clear that you understand that you're writing a speech by using stage directions in brackets, like raise hand, wait for response, look directly at the ceiling, whatever you want to tell yourself to do, and interactive language. They're the kind of key indicators that you know that you're writing a speech. And I'll say again, that double page document about how to format letters, articles and speeches is your Bible for that. It's your how-to guide. So make sure you keep that handy. Okay, make sure you've got those written down for me. Okay, so once you've done that, which is essentially establishing the question, isn't it, and making sure you're focused on it, and it's a few tips for how to actually write it. I want you now to, we're going to go through the steps of planning. Now, this is a 5-minute job, okay, and that includes underlining the question with your audience and your purpose. So the first thing you're going to do is very, very briefly, you're going to make notes on the audience in terms of their interests, their priorities and values, their experiences and their stresses. Now, a couple of you got this question wrong on the quiz, so hopefully this will be a good way of consolidating that. So these are the 4 things that you think about for your audience to make it relevant to them. Do you want to just take a couple of minutes now on your own, just pause the video and just jot down any of these things you can think of for elderly people. So what are they interested in? What do they value, etc. And remember that we can be a bit stereotypical here because we're looking for features that most elderly people are likely to relate to or likely to sort of, be interested in, because that's just kind of what we do when we write for a certain group of people. We look for like similarities in the group, which can seem a bit stereotypical. Okay, so pause the video now and have a go. Okay, so I'm just going to share with you some of my ideas. You can add these on if you didn't get them. Bingo, that's probably my most stereotypical one. Pensions, that's going to be their source of income, so they're going to be very interested in that. Their grandchildren, if they've got any other children. Crosswords maybe. My dad is approaching pensioner age and he likes a good crossword. So thinking about different things that they're interested in. You might have more than that. That's great. Priorities and values. I thought of safety. Sometimes it can feel quite scary being out at night, especially if you've got a sore hip, or if you couldn't really run very far. You might not like being out after dark. You might be intimidated by big groups of people. Family, really, you'd hope that would be one of their values and priorities, and also their own health. That might be something that they value as well. Their experiences. So I was thinking a lot about the fact that a lot of elderly don't drive for various health reasons, and they have to rely on buses a lot of the time. You might have your own feelings on buses. Think about being on a bus or relying on buses from an elderly person's point of view. Being cold, there's a lot of kind of issues with the elderly in cold houses and poor heating, and it can lead to a lot of dangerous health situations. So that might be something you think about. If the health is quite poor, they might be often going to the doctors or to hospital. Just the experience of growing old and time passing kind of reminded me a bit of afternoons, actually, thinking about this in terms of the mothers being pushed to the side of their own lives. So this is the bit where I think it's all about your life experience as well. Like, if you've not had much to do with elderly people, then you might not be able to think of too many things here, but as long as you've got a couple, it's fine. Okay, and remember, you can always turn to films and TV shows that you've watched if you don't know many elderly people. Stresses, I was thinking about seeing family enough, maybe. They might live far away, or they might just be really busy. Loneliness. I was thinking about, those Christmas adverts, and it's really always makes me cry. The elderly people on the road. Remember that one where the man pretended he died to get his family all together? That was so sad, but said a really strong message, didn't it, about how people sometimes don't make enough time to see the elderly. Maybe feeling left out. If you're I certainly feel like this now that I'm pregnant, and I know it's not quite the same, but when you're seeing people engaging in an activity that you can't do because of your health or for your own safety, it's not nice. I know, I wonder how often maybe as we get older we'll feel that more and more. And again, the stress about feeling old or ill, or feeling like in afternoons that they're in the winter of their life. I think like after my dad had his stroke last summer, I certainly started to think a lot more about his own age and what he wanted to do with his life. So things like that you can use in your writing to kind of make it really relevant to those type of people that you're speaking to. So again, don't worry if you didn't get all of those, and it's not about spending 10 minutes writing a massive list. 2 to 3 on each one would be absolutely fine. Okay. So what you then need to do with that list, obviously, is something. You can't just look at the list and be like, oh, what a beautiful list. I understand old people. Let's move on. So now what you need to do is link your audience to the topic that the exam board have given you in the question. So in your exam, when you're making the notes, I would make them down the left-hand side like this in a column, and then you can be able to link them to the topic then. Okay. So again, do you want to pause and see if you can make links yourself? So see if you can link the idea that elderly people are interested in bingo and pensions, grandchildren, crosswords. So something to do with technology. So how could those interests be a way into using technology? What technology could help them do those things? So pause now and have a go. Okay, so these were my ideas. So that's the key question you need to ask yourself. How could I encourage elderly people to use technology, appealing to these aspects? So I was thinking about social media. So in terms of family connections, for example, seeing family enough, the loneliness idea, and valuing their grandchildren. I was thinking about mobile phones in terms of online doctor's appointments. Live bus timetables would be useful for them in terms of the bus's experiences. They'll feel more connected and less lonely. And I also thought that phones would be useful for their safety in terms of calling for help if needed. Because obviously they wouldn't be, completely alone. God, that sounds like, it sounds futuristic to say you're never alone if your phone's in your pocket, like it's a person. But you know what I mean. You feel safer because you've got a way to communicate with people. So they were the things that I thought of. And you can do this for any question. Link your audience's interest to the topic. All right, then what you need to do is organise your arguments. Now this is really important because when I marked this paper, one of the problems that students, one of the mistakes they were making, I suppose, is that they encouraged elderly people to use every technology going. So they had a paragraph on the internet, and they had a paragraph on iPads, they had a paragraph on Apple Watches, etc., etc. Well, it's better to be selective, yeah, because, and actually, if you look at most of my points there, really, I just need to encourage them to use a mobile phone, because if they're using a mobile phone, they've got access to the internet, they've got access to social media, and it really doesn't matter if they've got an iPad as well. If you're encouraging them to use technology, a phone is a good place to start, because look at all these things that it links to in terms of their own experiences and interests. All right, so I would organise my arguments now by just numbering, or like just outlining my sort of like 4 key paragraph focuses or foci. Okay, so I've decided that I'm going to just focus on mobiles. I'm going to write my whole speech on mobiles. Do not worry that you're not answering the question, because you absolutely are. You're encouraging them to use the primary source of technology of the last 20 years. Yeah, so, and because we've planned and we've gone through what our audience are interested in and we've linked it to the topic, we know that phones now is like the ultimate technology for their lives. They're really important. And we're going to really be able to encourage them to use a phone far more than we would be able to encourage them to use an iPad, or just the internet, because where do you start? And a lot of students ended up sort of focusing on Wi-Fi problems at home and ringing up for help and things, and it kind of lost track of the question. Okay, so I've established focus on mobiles. I'm going to do that in my introduction. And then I'm going to sort of focus on pathos. So I'm going to focus on emotion and emotional argument. I'm going to focus on connecting with family via phones, social media, FaceTime, and what that could offer elderly people who maybe don't get to see their grandchildren. I'm going to appeal to the idea that they might be lonely and that they can connect with like-minded people. Via social media. They can join a group, maybe like a walkers group or a bingo group or anything, something like that. So that's going to be my first key argument. I'm then going to move to more of a logical argument, logos, and I'm going to think more about their convenience and experiences. So this is where I'm going to think about things like doctor's appointments, bus timetables, health news and advice that they can easily Google to get support with, crossword apps, maybe bingo apps. I'm sure they exist. So thinking more about how their lives will be improved, logically, practically, because I've already done the emotional one. And then I've decided to return to pathos, because as we know, people are more persuaded by emotions than they are by logical reasoning, but it's good to have both. But I feel like it's good to have more emotional reasoning. So pathos again, this time we're thinking about safety. So a friend in your pocket, I thought that'd be a nice image I could use in the speech. And I could embed ethos here with an anecdote or personal knowledge. I could even quote somebody else. I can quote some statistics even about elderly safety rates for if they're carrying a mobile on them. You can just make them up. Okay. And then I'll just finish off my speech with just some logical points to really kind of like think about counter arguments and what might put them off. Highlight that it's really easy to learn, that you don't need to be worried about, this big new invention, that you can take steps. Start off with texting, then calling. Well, probably calling's easier than texting. And also that maybe actually this is a chance for you to bond with your grandchildren. They could teach you how to do it, and you really can bond with them and learn something from them. So overall, what I've ended up there with is a really clear outline for a Band 5 speech, essentially, because it's really focused on what the audience will need to be encouraged. It's linked to their lives and their experiences, and I've really thought about how I can really convince them. Okay, so that's the key. Actually, before I just want to recap. So the key stages are: jot down things you know about your audience, link those to the topic, and then organize. What order are you going to outline your argument in? And that doesn't need to be writing it all out like that, like I've done here. It can just be numbering the notes that you've already made and just jotting down some extra notes. Do not think you can't deviate from your plan, because you absolutely can. If you get halfway through and you think of a really good argument you've not said in your plan, absolutely put it in. But this is just about arming yourself before you start and giving yourself a clear direction, so that you don't come across to the examiner as one of those students who's just making it up as they go along and hoping for the best, hoping they end up with a cohesive text, because you won't. Okay. So again, obviously you can jot that down as a model example. I'm not going to do this again, so in future lessons when we look at speech letters and articles, I won't be going through this process, but I'll expect you to use this process. So please make sure that you've got very clear notes about these 3 steps and how you do it for each question. Okay, right, so to finish off today, I wanted to give you a chance to have a go at some speech writing. I'm hoping to do a live lesson with you where I can give you feedback on a variety of writing. So can you have a go at one of the following? Either the opening to this speech about encouraging elderly people to use technology, where you're including interactive language, live language like today and here, and stage directions, so that you're showing me that you can adapt your language for format and purpose. Okay, so that's the key skills that you're looking at if you choose option number 1. If you choose option number 2, then that's just going to be writing one of the arguments and developing it. So you can choose one of mine. You might choose number 1 or number 2, number 3, number 4, either one, or you can choose one of your own. But the key thing is that you're developing your argument and you're building up an encouraging case. Now, the skills that that links to are developing relevant content that's appropriate for your audience and your purpose. It's about being convincing. It's your ability to use a range of logos, ethos, and pathos, and it's your ability to use a relevant tone and vocabulary formality for the audience. So there's a wider range of skills that I can check on option number 2, but it's up to you in terms of where you think you're at the moment and what you could potentially get feedback on and what you want to practice doing. Okay, so the idea is if you send me whichever one you choose, and I'm literally looking for a paragraph either way, it doesn't have to be a massive piece of writing. I'm just checking out if there's anything else I haven't. What I'm going to do then is hopefully like collate examples together and create a live lesson where I can give you live feedback on your writing, and you guys can speak to me in the chat and build on it, and we can kind of do some dirt activities based on gaps in your writing. So that's the idea. So I'll be asking you to kind of have a mini go at letters, articles and speeches across the next couple of weeks. So that's the one for today. Okay, let me know if you've got any problems. Obviously, if you don't send it in, then I can't give you any feedback. So please do complete one of those activities. And if for whatever reason the week gets away from you and you don't get a chance to do this, then it's here. The video will be up all summer, and I do recommend you having a good go at it over the summer as part of your revision or prep for what you're going to come back to in September, even just before your mock as well. Whenever that might be. Okay, right guys, take care, and like I said, hopefully you don't have any issues, and I will be checking through my homework after 3 o'clock. Okay, bye guys.